phase of their reaction to the assassination be over. But, it's not the end of the story, and what's more, the fundamentals of the conflict remain very toxic and very dangerous. The Iranians kept their promise and may have bought some time. Iran had to calibrate its missile launches. Enough to satisfy angry Iranians, not enough to provoke a much more destructive American response. They seem to have guessed right. Iraqi soldiers shouted warnings to each other. They shared the huge Ain al-Assad base in western Iraq with the Americans. Afterwards, for the leaders, came a chance to save face, claim victory, and step back for the moment.
No Americans were harmed in last night's attack by the Iranian regime. We suffered no casualties. All of our soldiers are safe. Iran appears to be standing down, which is a good thing for all parties concerned and a very good thing for the world.
It looked different in Iran. A few in Tehran even got up early to celebrate revenge. Here's Zahra Jaspi, a university student. I have a great feeling, she said. I hope revenge continues, and I hope to see Trump fail. And later, the regime's faithful chanted death to America, as the supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, told them he hadn't finished yet.
The issue of revenge is something else. What happened last night was just a slap in the face.
For him, the assassination promotes unity in a divided country. And now Iran has more time for its speciality, unconventional warfare using proxies and allies. Here in Baghdad, the morning had nothing for Iraqis who want Iranians and Americans to leave them alone. The Badr organization, a political party based on a pro-Iranian militia, gathered to mourn the assassinations and condemned the U.S. refusal to pull their troops out of Iraq.
They insist on their presence in Iraq. That means they forced everybody in Iraq to go for resistance, for military resistance against them.
Do you think now that the Iranians have made this attack that it's the end of this chapter?
They do more, and they increase, I think. This is only, I think it's a message, not more.
A message to the Americans saying...
It's a message that we are serious.
This is a long-term conflict, the biggest danger at the moment in the most unstable part of the world. Without a political dialogue and some kind of deal, the slide towards war will continue. Jeremy Bowen, BBC News, Baghdad.
In his address this afternoon, Donald Trump said the US would impose additional sanctions on Iran. Mr. Trump has been a fierce critic of the 2015 deal aimed at limiting...
So yun po yung latest updates po sa Iran and US conflict. So patuloy po natin subaybayan po ang iba pang balita. Tubo po natin sa iba.
Its second most powerful figure without embroiling US forces in another protracted Middle East conflict. This was very much teleprompter Trump today rather than Twitter Trump. His remarks were very measured. He didn't gloat. He didn't mock Iran for what many people here regard as a fairly tokenistic response to the killing of General Soleimani. Question is, will that restraint continue if after this overt attack by Iran against America, it uses its proxy network and its militias to launch more covert attacks against America and its allies in the region and beyond?
Nick Brandt, thank you. The Prime Minister spoke to President Trump about the Iranian crisis this afternoon. Boris Johnson warned Iran not to repeat the reckless and dangerous missile attacks on the air bases. He also said General Soleimani had the blood of British troops on his hands, but called for urgent de-escalation. This report from our political editor Laura Kunsberg contains some flashing images.
Why have you not spoken about Iran, Prime Minister?
Not the first day back at work, but the first glimpse of the Prime Minister this year. The task to try and cool tempers between the Middle East and the man in the White House, thousands of miles away. The solemn situation a contrast with Boris Johnson's conquest of the Commons.
We, of course, condemn the attack on Iraqi military bases hosting coalition forces. Iran should not repeat these reckless and dangerous attacks, but must instead pursue urgent de-escalation.
But the Labour leader, still at the dispatch box with a new one months away, claims that America's original act, killing the Iranian general, was against international law.
What evidence has the Prime Minister got to suggest that this attack on him and his death was not an illegal act by the United States?
The strict issue of legality is not for the UK to determine, since it was not our operation. But I think that most reasonable people would accept that the United States has a right to protect its bases and its personnel.
The Prime Minister attacked Mr Corbyn for not explicitly condemning Qasem Soleimani for his role in terror attacks.
That man had the blood of British troops on his hands.
Mr Speaker, if we stand by international law, as I'm sure the government does, surely killing somebody in a foreign territory is an illegal act.
Ministers wanted to avoid any further conflict, but also there's a sense the government wanted to avoid getting tangled in the politics of all of this, with a deeply unpredictable friend in the White House and some uncertainty about how the Prime Minister wants to shape his relationships with the rest of the world. That depends in part on, you guessed it, Brexit, and the kind of long-term relationship the Prime Minister agrees for after we leave with his new visitor today, the EU's top official. Boris Johnson must define the UK's links with its neighbours, friends and hostile rivals abroad. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News, Westminster.
A Ukrainian passenger plane carrying 176 people, including 3 Britons, crashed shortly after takeoff in Iran this morning, just hours after the Iranian missile attacks. There were no survivors. The majority of passengers on the Boeing airliner were from Iran and Canada. Several airlines have now said they will avoid Iranian airspace. Here's our transport correspondent, Tom Burridge.
Devastation minutes after takeoff. Later, bodies of those on the Ukrainian Airlines flight were taken away. There were no survivors. Most of those killed were Iranian or Canadian. British nationals Sam Zukeyi and Mohammad Reza Kadkodezadeh were on board. So were Saeed Taghmasebi and his wife Nilufar, who recently got married in Tehran. Tonight, one report quoted a Canadian intelligence official saying initial evidence suggested the plane was not brought down by a missile and may have suffered a technical malfunction. Ukrainian Airlines said the airliner was only 3 years old and was serviced 2 days ago. At an emotional press conference, the airline's technical director said the plane was one of their best. The plane left the Iranian capital, Tehran, early this morning. It was bound for the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. Data published online shows the plane crashed minutes after takeoff. The Boeing 737 steadily climbed some 4,500 feet. Takeoff initially appeared normal. Then the plane suddenly disappears from radar. That suggests there was a type of catastrophic incident. There was an initial suggestion from a Ukrainian official of an engine failure. But if an engine fails, a Boeing 737 should be able to keep flying. Pilots train regularly for that scenario. Crucial to establishing the cause of this crash will be the aircraft's flight data and cockpit voice recorders. The Iranian authorities have them. Protocol dictates that they will lead this investigation. It's claimed this video shows the plane. If genuine, it seems to be on fire. There's a flash before the impact.
if there'd been an engine failure, just one of the two engines on board the aeroplane, it would still be capable of climbing, and therefore it'd be capable of